What if events went differently in Ultimate Spider-Man? What if the Venom Symbiote possessed Peter Parker? Remember the classic Ultimate Spider-Man comics and the video game for PS2, when Peter briefly uses the suit? Well, during this time, the suit almost had full control of Peter Parker. Within the Ultimate Spider-Man comic run, we can see how Peter almost kills the robber because he thinks it was Uncle Ben's killer. Imagine, in an alternate timeline, the Venom Symbiote had fully taken over Peter. Well, in today's highly requested Marvel's What If, I will be diving into this and showcasing the repercussions if Ultimate Peter Parker had kept the symbiote. This What If is based on the original PS2 video game and the comic books. I do want to say too, make sure to have your requests heard. Join the community right now. Brand new Discord, Reddit pages, and Facebook pages are out now, and I will be making exclusive content on all of your requests. I'm also super active on all of my socials, so make sure to catch me when I'm not working on the videos. You get tons of updates and events, and there will be giveaways held as well. There will be more announcements on the Discord about the giveaways. That being said, join me as we embark on a journey and explore the multiple choices made by the inhabitants of the multiverse and how they affect reality. In this reality, Peter Parker becomes Venom for a few moments before he breaks free from the symbiote. But what if that never happened? Peter breaks free from the Venom symbiote because he does not want to commit murder. But what if Peter Parker chose a different path? What if Peter kills the criminal? The man who killed Uncle Ben. All this can be made possible by one person's statement, Eddie Brock. In this reality, Eddie Brock is greatly affected by the death of his parents, to the point that he has rage issues. Join me and see how everything turns out. Peter Parker was disturbed by a particular fact. Trask Company had killed his parents. Peter was just coming back from his meeting with Eddie Brock, and he had gotten a lot to think about. As Peter stared at the rapidly passing buildings, he was overwhelmed by his memories of the past. He closed his eyes as he remembered what happened to him during the past few days. Peter had been crying his heart out at home after Mary Jane had broken up with him. What he saw shocked him. His parents' belongings and tapings. Peter had completely stumbled upon them by chance, and he was grateful that he did. Peter had immediately viewed a tape, and the content evoked a lot of emotions within him. He saw his father and mother, a young version of Uncle Ben and May. Peter also saw unfamiliar faces, a married couple and their son, whom Peter was reportedly close with. May had sneaked in while Peter had been viewing the tape, and her emotions were also evoked at the sight of Uncle Ben. Aunt May knew who the unfamiliar faces were, and she told their identities to Parker. According to Aunt May, the boy was Eddie Brock, Peter's closest friend at that time. Aunt May had also suggested that Peter search for him, and he immediately did that. Aunt May felt that it would help him take his mind off Mary Jane, and Peter caught on to her intention, but he did nothing to show it, as he also thought that it would also be a great idea to rediscover and reconnect with Eddie Brock. Peter had gotten the location of Brock within minutes from the internet. Eddie was a student of Empire State University, and Peter had reached out to him. Peter and Eddie's conversation went smoothly, as if they had been long-lost friends, which they were. Peter had met up with Eddie and given him a copy of the videotape containing both of their parents. Eddie was so excited, and he had given Peter an unusual gift in return. Eddie carried Peter to the Reed Richards Research Center and showed him a black goo, which he said was his and Peter's inheritance. Eddie had told him how the Trask Company had seized all of their parents' research when they discovered that they could weaponize it. Eddie also told him how their parents had started the research again, and their subsequent mystery deaths. Peter had been able to deduce that the Trask Company had killed both their parents because it seemed like the logical thing. When Peter asked Eddie what their parents' research was actually on, the answer had shocked him. They were researching on how to cure cancer. Eddie had replied. The cab had arrived at Peter's apartment, and he stepped down. When he entered the apartment, his sad demeanor was suddenly changed as he saw Aunt May and Gwen Stacy making cookies, while laughing and dancing. They seemed to always put him in a good mood. Peter brushed aside all of his thoughts of his parents and Trask company as he went in to make merry with them. Peter was at school, and he had just seen Mary Jane. His heart skipped a beat, and he was running to meet her, but he was stopped by Gwen, and thankfully so, because Peter did not trust himself to say anything sensible to her. Gwen asked Peter where and when he was going, but he gave her a smile. Suddenly, Eddie Brock pulled up in a dazzling car. Peter had not informed Gwen yet of Eddie, and from her happy expression, he wished that he had done it sooner. Gwen begged Peter to ask if she could join them in the car, and he obliged. Eddie replied affirmative, and Gwen's joy held no boundaries. A few moments later, Eddie zoomed off in his car with Peter, as well as with Gwen as his passengers. Peter's thought as he noticed Mary Jane from the side window looking at him, as if in pain, but he quickly brushed it aside. Today is for fun and not sad memories, Peter told himself. Peter looked at the car in wonder and felt a little jealous as his parents left little to nothing for him, but Eddie had gotten a dazzling car from his own parents. Happy and fun moments only, Peter said to himself, as he cleared his head again of all the sad thoughts. Eddie had promised to take them out to have a nice time, and he was looking forward to it. Peter had to admit it was good to have Eddie back. Eddie had taken them to a restaurant, and they had a fun time. Peter was happy that Gwen was there. Do you like reggae? Eddie asked Gwen, and she immediately affirmed. Eddie proceeded to ask her and Peter out for a musical concert. Peter had declined, but Gwen immediately jumped on the idea. Peter could not attend because his job at the Daily Bugle, and Eddie was pleased to know that he was working. Gwen and Eddie empathized with them, but that did not make the outing. Peter even encouraged them to embark on the event. They continued having a good time until suddenly, Peter could not hold it anymore. Peter decided to ask Eddie the question that had been bugging him in his mind, whether the Trask company killed their parents. Eddie told Peter that he was not sure, but it was not good enough for him. Peter pointed out to Eddie that during their first meeting, he had implied that their parents were killed by Trask company. Eddie heaved a deep sigh and told Peter what confirmed his greatest fears. Eddie told Peter that he did further investigations, and he found out that Boulevard Trask, the owner of Trask Company, had ordered Richard Parker to test the unstable specimen of their research on their plane, and that's what had killed them both. Peter noticed that as Eddie talked, he clinched the metal table they were eating on, and his tone increased because of the rage he was feeling. I just wish I had the means. I would rid this world of evil, Eddie said. Peter tried to calm Eddie down as he reached a rageful fit with his explanations, and he succeeded. Eddie calmed down. Eddie released the table, and Peter noticed a huge dent on the metal. Peter was quite surprised at Eddie's outburst of rage, and then Eddie explained to them he had developed rageful fits after the death of his parents, and he was currently on therapy for that. Peter decided to dig more, and it turned out that Eddie had been looking for ways to exact revenge on Trask Company, but he did not have the means. Peter smiled as he knew that he possessed the means. Trask Company would get what is coming to them. Do not worry, Peter had assured Eddie, who looked at him, puzzled. Peter was at home studying his father's work while playing one of his tapes. Gwen had gone out for the reggae party with Eddie, and Peter was left alone with his Aunt May in the apartment. Peter had hoped that Gwen Stacy would have a good time because she actually deserved it and needed it, as she had recently lost her dad, Captain Stacy. Peter had decided to drop the Trask Company vendetta as he remembered Uncle Ben's quote of great power and responsibility. Peter figured that both his parents and Uncle Ben would frown at his actions if he took them against Trask Company. Peter decided that looking through his parents' belongings would clear his mind off things. While Peter was reading his dad's journal, the current tape that he was playing froze him. What froze him in particular was the tone of his father's voice. His father's voice broke his heart. Peter finally focused and discovered what his father was talking about, how the research was snatched away from them by the Trask Company. I would never say this to your face, Ben, but you were right. Never trust a man on a tie. Richard Parker sobbed, and there was more than Peter could bear. Peter immediately put on his Spider-Man costume and took off to Reed Richards' research facility. Peter made up his mind to collect and complete his father's research. I would make them proud, he said in his head. Peter's emotions were currently in a mix, as he was feeling sympathy and sadness for his parents, and great anger and rage for the Trask company. Peter decided that the Trask company could wait, as he had to take care of his father's research first, the cure for cancer. Peter landed with a cat-like grace on the roof of the building as he heaved a heavy sigh, as he thought of the implications of what he wanted to do. After pondering on it for a while, Peter decided to go on with the idea, and he descended from the ceiling to the lab with his web. Peter wasted no time, and he got to the safe where the black goo was kept. Peter remembered faintly how Eddie had told him that his father's DNA was used for the black goo research. Peter started scooping the black goo from the container into his glass vial, when suddenly, some of it dropped onto his skin. Peter was alarmed at first, but when nothing happened, he sighed a huge relief. But he was too fast in judging the situation. The black goo on his skin started spreading rapidly fast around his body. To his horror, Peter tried all he could to detach himself from the goo, but within a few moments, he was already completely engulfed by the goo. Peter looked at himself and shouted in horror. Peter felt great. The black goo had formed a sleek suit for him, and it was amazing. The suit had greatly increased his powers and reflexes, and Peter had maximized the benefits in saving a popular actress from a kidnapping and the city from a villain. Peter could not help but appreciate the great minds of both his father, Richard Parker, and Brock. The black goo was simply mind-blowing. Parker remembered Eddie telling him that the DNA used in the experiment was his own dad's, and he was shivered as the thoughts of what would have happened if he touched the black goo without possessing his dad's DNA. Peter had landed on a building after he had escaped the police. To the cheers of the crowd, he spotted a thief. The sight made Peter smile under the suit, as it was an opportunity to test out his new abilities. Peter leaped from the building and set on a pursuit of the criminal. Within seconds, Peter caught up to the criminal and tackled him to the ground. When Peter looked at the man's face, he felt a great surge of rage and anger. The man was the burglar who had killed Uncle Ben, and Peter wanted no more than to kill him on the spot. Peter then suddenly recognized that it was the suit. The suit was controlling him, and he looked at his hands. He was squeezing the life out of the criminal. Peter tried stopping himself from killing the man when he remembered the conversation that he had with Eddie Brock. I just wish I could rid the world of evil, Eddie had said. The words of Eddie were enough motivation, and Peter gave control to the suit, and the man's neck immediately snapped. Peter examined the man and saw that he was dead. Peter looked at his hands in disbelief and fear. He had done what he thought he would never do. As Spider-Man, he had just killed a man. What scared Peter the most was not that he had killed a guilty man, but that he enjoyed it. The reggae party had exceeded both Gwen and Eddie's expectations, and they were both happy, so much so that Gwen accepted when Eddie invited her to his dorm. What Gwen did not expect was when Eddie attempted to kiss her, she quickly pushed him away and thwarted his efforts. Gwen immediately told Eddie that she was 16, but that did not seem to faze him. Eddie attempted to kiss again, but this time Gwen dodged and brought her knees up to him, groaning before she scrambled out in a hurry. "They're all the same," Eddie said, with disgust. Eddie immediately put on the TV to take away his mind from the incident, and what he saw in the news had shocked him. The news reporter showed sightings and videos of a black Spider-Man, and how the crowd were behind him. Eddie was still bothered because something looked familiar about the black suit. Then, suddenly it came to his mind, and he screamed, "The black goo! The black suit he kept at Reed Richards' science facility, his inheritance." Eddie quickly rushed out of his room to the facility while his heart was beating rapidly. Eddie prayed with all of his heart that his thoughts would not be a reality, that the black goo was not stolen. When Eddie arrived at the facility, what he saw shocked him. Peter had suddenly felt more alive when he had killed the criminal. He now had crossed the line and he was a new Spider-Man. He now had this longing, and the black goo started pointing him towards a location, and Peter started following the longing. The longing felt like a different thing from a lost body part. Peter saw the destination and he was not surprised. It was Reed's science facility. Peter went in through the route that he used to get in the first time with too much ease. Peter landed on the roof, and he was being led to the jar he left open that contained the rest of the black goo, and his suit immediately had absorbed it. Peter felt much stronger and powerful. The absorption gave him a surge of strength that he never had felt before. Peter's physique was now more bulkier and huge, and Peter loved it. Peter was about to go when he now felt another longing and guiding by the black goo, and he had followed it. He reached another safe and forcefully opened it with ease. Peter was shocked to find another mass of black goo. He figured that Eddie had kept two of them in separate places for scientific research reasons. Peter quickly absorbed all of the black goo in the jar, and was almost taken aback when Eddie rushed into the room. The look of horror and loathing was vivid on Eddie's face, and Peter felt sorry for him. Peter wanted to reveal himself to Eddie, but he never got the chance. Eddie cried with a primate, grittiful voice that surprised even Peter and charged. Peter did not want to harm him, but he was not in control of his actions. The black goo was. Eddie was perfectly seized up by his neck and quickly decapitated by the claws that punctured out of Peter's suit. Peter couldn't believe what he had done, and suddenly he heard voices approaching the lab. He quickly shot a web and escaped, while still glancing at Eddie's body in shock and sorrow. What had he done? By the time the security forces had arrived at the lab, Peter was far gone. Peter stood at the edge of the building, still reflecting about his past actions. Peter had discovered that the suit could disfuse into his body and emerge anytime he wanted it to. On his way out of Reed Richards' science facility, Peter suddenly caused the suit to re-emerge by his thoughts, and it did. Peter looked at the suit and considered what he had done. He had killed 2 people now, in the span of one night. Peter discovered that the suit was manipulating him, but what made him scared was that he actually enjoyed the killings. The only death that he felt remorse for was that of Eddie Brock. All this would not have happened if Trask Company had not seized our dad's work in the first place, or caused their deaths, Peter said. In anger, Peter decided that to honor the death of his parents, Eddie, and his parents, he would have to take down Trask Company. Peter felt the black goo rejoice at his decision. Peter noticed that the suit craved violence, death, and revenge. Peter did not know that the symbiote was manipulating him, and what caused the deaths of 2 men was beating himself up for it. Peter looked at the suit and figured that he could not call himself Spider-Man ever again. A memory of the name that had been written on the jar suddenly came to Peter's mind, and he smiled. Venom, Peter said. Peter had swung home, and when he approached his apartment, he entered an alleyway and ditched his Spider-Man clothes for good, as he figured that he would never be able to use the mantle of Spider-Man ever again. Peter went into his home after causing his body to absorb and hide the suit. Aunt May and Gwen Stacy noticed an unusual change in Peter's attitude. He was arrogant and harsh and prone to anger. It made Aunt May and Gwen Stacy concerned. Gwen blamed it on his recent breakup with Mary Jane, and Aunt May blamed it on his recent discovery of his parents and probably how they had passed away. Peter did not care what they thought, as he paid them no mind. It seemed like the suit was causing Peter the lack of empathy, as Peter was nonchalant when Gwen had told him about her near-rape experience with Eddie. Even though the name of Eddie struck a chord in Peter's heart, he just stood up and went inside his room, leaving Gwen astounded. Peter quickly laid down on his bed, as he knew he had a bigger day tomorrow. Tomorrow was when he would attack and burn down Trask Company. School had been a blur for Parker as he just wanted to focus on destroying the Trask company later in the day. Peter's new bold and nonchalant attitude did not go unnoticed by the staff and students of the school. Mary Jane just got word of it, and she also witnessed it firsthand when Parker had gotten into a fight in the hallway with a bully. MJ knew that something was fundamentally wrong with Peter, as Peter would never fight in public at school. When MJ had finally decided to swallow her pride and approach Peter, she was met with rejection, and it broke her heart. Peter had just laughed at her face while he walked away. Peter was nowhere to be found after the final bell had rung, as he was already on his way to enact his revenge. The reason Peter decided to go early was to catch up to Mr. Bolivia Trask himself at the company. Peter was on the building to the company, and he was literally fuming with anger. It was time for vengeance, he said in a husky voice. Venom tore through the gates of the facility with ease. The security men thought that it was Spider-Man, and they were no match for his strength and speed. Venom threw one of them over the fence, and the other one plastered on the wall with blood. Spider-Man, or Venom, just made easy work for all of them now, till no one remained to challenge him. Suddenly, Venom heard police sirens, and he cursed under his breath. Trask had called for help. The police lined up and opened fire on Venom. Though the bullets gave him some pain, Parker shook it off and healed fast. The only thing that bullets did was to annoy him. Spider-Man tore through the steel gates of Trask and threw it to the police cars. The officers fled for their lives as the gates caused a massive explosion on impact with the police cars. That should take care of them for the meantime, Venom said in his mind as he looked up at the Trask facility. Venom caught a glance of Bolivia Trask, and he pointed at him and did a slice gesture at his throat as he proceeded to enter into the Trask building. Bolivia Trask was hyperventilating. He recognized the black goo from some years back, and the bad deeds he had done came rushing back to him. He knew that Venom wanted his life, but he was not ready to die now. Bolivia Trask gave a pep talk to Silver Sable and her Wild Pack, and promised them a fortune if they could stop Venom here and now, before it was too late. Sable and her Wild Pack found the whole thing amusing, but they did not show it. They did not think Venom was much of a threat. They were confident in their ability to bring him down. They quickly secured Trask in a secret compartment, just in time as Venom rounded the corner and the fight began. Trask could not see anything, but he heard it all. At first, Bolivia heard the pained screams of Venom, and that seemed to give him joy. But after a while, he heard the surprised screams of the Wild Pack and Silver Sable begging for mercy. He then screamed of pain, then nothing. The silence was so eerie that Trask tried to stop himself from breathing. So hard, but to no avail. Venom suddenly tore apart the entrance to where he was held, and he was held by the neck, bringing him into the open. Trask pleaded for his life, and because of it, Venom just smiled, and suddenly the face of Peter Parker was unveiled, and he told Trask who he was and why he wanted to kill him. After that, there was only one person alive in the building, and it was Peter. Nick Fury had gotten reports of some mutants destroying Trask Company, the building, and the policeman car, and he was currently on the case. His men had eyes on the building, and they discovered that everyone was dead apart from Spider-Man. The staff awaited Nick Fury's orders and told them to torch the building, and a missile was sent to the building and consumed in the flames. Thankfully, the building was in an isolated area. Nick Fury deduced, if not, he would not have been able to risk the lives of civilians. Looking at the fire, Fury knew that nobody could have survived a blast like that. But when his men checked the building, Spider-Man's body was never found. And that is going to be, what if Spider-Man had been possessed by the Venom Symbiote in the Ultimate Universe? It's a very interesting take if Ultimate Peter Parker had chosen a different path within the comic run, and even the video game itself. This is just a very interesting Marvel's What If, and I do want to say, kind of going back to the roots of the channel, like I said before, you go from, Peter not wanting to kill Uncle Ben's killer, and then in this alternate timeline when he does, everything goes to hell. Everything changes for Peter Parker. I think a part 2 is definitely needed, as in the thumbnail you can see the ultimate Green Goblin. But I do want to make Peter a hero with the Venom Symbiote in the Ultimate Universe, although it would be a huge storyline to really do the complete run of this, like going all the way to like the next issues. I think it would be amazing. But that being said, how did you enjoy this comic book What If, or the video game What If? How did you enjoy it? Did you like it? And let me know in the comments down below if you did play the original Spider-Man, the original Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2 or the PSP. I know it was for a lot of different games. But as always, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on, as it really helps the channel out a lot. It really does. And I do want to say, make sure to check out the community page. Make sure to follow the Discord chat, because there's a ton of different things like giveaways happening, announcements, updates, teases. You're going to see a ton of things there. We're building the community up, so join the community. You can talk to a ton of different people. You can request your fan fictions, talk about different fan fictions. And also, I do want to say the Reddit page is up, and you're going to see a lot more updates on there, as well as the Facebook page. But anyways, as always, do make sure to check out all of those things again. Anyways, as always, have a fantastic day.